Hey, what's going on, Recreators? This is Nick. You're listening to the Life Recreated Show. And this show, we're all about diving into learning, healing, and growing in mind, body, and spirit. And so each week, we are all about just tackling some difficult conversations so that we can learn how we can just fully walk in freedom as a new creation. And I'm excited about this conversation that I'm going to have today with a good friend of mine. Today, we're going to be diving into the topic of talking about toxic masculinity. And I'm actually joined by a good friend of mine here, Mr. Arrington. He is the CEO, the founder of Rugged Evolution Beard Care. And he is responsible for helping me to get things in order. When I was lost, I found him and he got me on the right track. He's also the host of the R Smooth podcast, man. And I'll be definitely sure to link all of those down in the description below. And I'm excited about me and him having this conversation. We're going to be talking about toxic masculinity today. Arrington, how you doing today, man?
Man, what's going on, Nick? I feel so honored to be on this show, man. I'm excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me, boss, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm excited as well, bro. I think I had mentioned it the other day, and I'll take this time to say it right now. Ever since we met, we've known each other for a few years now and met through different avenues in real estate, man. But I've always been inspired by what you're doing as a young entrepreneur, as a young black man in our community, man. It just blows my mind. All the stuff you got going on, everything that you're working towards, the value that you're adding to other people, man, is exponential, man. And I'm just excited about everything that and how everything is working out, man, and how everything is laying into place, man. I'm really excited about it for you, man.
Man, thank you so much. Just hearing you say those kind words, really, it always motivates me, because I tell everybody I was never trying to work on to be I'm excited. I do want to lead by example. I do want to, let my actions lead to some people, but I never want to be the person higher up. I never want to be that leader. I was behind the scenes kind of guy, but just my whole focus, my whole mission in life is to change the narrative. So just with the things I do, the way I talk, walk, introduce myself, socialize with people, the relationships I build, the way I work, I'm just trying to change the narrative, because anybody change the narrative, there's always that stigma with African-American males. Oh, and young. Oh, he can't. No.
Yeah. Because how old are you?
27.
You're 27. Okay, gotcha. All right, gotcha.
27. Been a business owner for entrepreneur for about 5 years going on. But in that frame I've been very fortunate and blessed to accomplish some great things, and still have a lot of more things to accomplish. But just building great relationships. I'm a listener. Make sure I listen. All the young people out there, please, who's watching this and listening to this, be sure to always listen. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So you got to close it and you got to listen to all the great tools. And that's helped me in life. Yeah, man. I just like to change the narrative. That's all I can say. I just love to change the narrative. You got the haters out there. You got the haters. I hopefully I don't think I have haters, but there's people that look down on you just for the color of your skin and all that negativity. So I just try to help change the narrative and keep them.
And I think you brought up a really good point, man. Before we jump into what we're going to talk about, I think that was one of the things that really drew me to just admiring you and what you've been doing and how you move, is the fact of like really changing that narrative. You know what I mean? Like for me, I turned 40 last week.
Boy, you don't look
exactly. I know, boy.
That man exfoliate.
Exactly, boy. I get better with time, man.
There you go.
When I look at like where I was at 27, 28, 29, I was like, man, if I would have had like that mindset, or just been exposed to that level of excellence, or wanting to portray that level of excellence, man, it would have played out differently. So that's why I get excited to see it, and just to see it play out. I tell my wife this all the time. One of the things that I love seeing, and it's one of my big things that I really focus on, is I love seeing when people are in the grind of something. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times, especially now in the time that we're living in, we can see success. We see people becoming successful. We see all these different things, and we can see the after effects of it. A lot of people don't really see like the journey. The journey is like what
don't see from day one to they don't see day one until where it's taking them.
Yep. For sure. And the journey is, I feel like, where you learn a lot of the lessons at. I mean, absolutely. Success, it becomes, once you get to that level, it's like, I'm assuming that it would just kind of flow and just roll in a certain way. But seeing the journey, that's what's important, man. So I'm excited, man, to see your journey, bro. Like I said, I'm going to link everything down below, bro, because I know that you got an amazing legacy that you're going to be leaving, man, on this earth, for sure, dog. And I don't just throw words out there like that to just say words like that. I ain't the type to be I don't want to gas people up. You know what I mean? We're in a gas station here. We're
Yeah,
gonna tell you
man,
how it is.
gas away, gas away. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
exactly.
I'm
Yeah, I'm gonna
enjoying it.
give you
No,
your flowers now. I'm gonna give you flowers now. You know what I'm saying? So we got them now. So
no, I appreciate it.
cool deal. So look, I wanted to jump into a conversation. I think this is a good conversation. I wanted to really address this issue of toxic masculinity. I know you and I, we had a like we talked on the phone maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you remember this, but you had mentioned, like, you had touched on that topic and how you had maybe had a conversation with somebody around there. And it really started piquing my interest, because I think that's one of the issues that we as young men in our generation, we're really facing, and we really need to learn how to change the narrative around. We need to learn how to change the narrative around that. So I wanted to talk with you about it, as far as coming from different angles of being an entrepreneur, angles of being a young Black man, angles of being a younger man in general, and just see what your take is. But where I wanted to start first was, for you, how would you define, when you hear the term toxic masculinity, how would you define that term when you hear that term?
When I hear that term, I always think of stereotypes, masculine stereotypes. For example, changing a tire, learning how to work your ways around a car, changing a tire, or being an athlete, being very athletic, playing sports. Those to me are like stereotypes, because they're actions. You're assuming that, okay, if you suck at sports, or if you don't play sports, you're not really a man. If you don't know what this is underneath the hood in your car, that doesn't make you a man. If you don't listen to hip hop music, that don't make you a man. If you are a fan of theater, if you are on Broadway, if you are more involved in music than sports, stuff like that, certain actions, stereotypes, that's when I think of toxic masculinity. It's an irritating term. I hate the fact that it really exists, because we are trying to, and I say we as far as the ones that are trying to help change the narrative and build up the change, we're trying to get away from that stigma. But you still have people, and a lot of them are raised in that era. You have young people that still believe, hey, if you don't drink beer, you're not a man. If you can't take a drink, you're not really a man, or little things like that. If you watch this, you're not a man. And I can't stand it, man. It's crazy, but it's still a word that we're trying to get rid of, but it's still very much in existence in our society.
So with being like, and I know you mentioned earlier, you said you were 27 years old. I feel where I'm at right now is I'm in this gap, like a generation gap, because it's like I just turned 40. So I know some of the older gentlemen that I look up to, people that are in my dad's age, their age range. I saw that as being really prevalent in their, you know what I mean, their kind of culture and their society.
Oh, absolutely.
It was crazy. So where it was like all these different kind of mindsets that they handed down, that said, okay, it was almost like, especially here in our country, I think it's a bigger issue, because we're in a capitalist country when we revolve around capitalism. So there's, on top of just like this masculinity issue of what defines a man, you now have another whole layer that says, okay, this is what defines you as a man. But then you have capitalism and
because it's almost like a leadership role. Like in order for you have to be what's the word I'm looking for? If you're not most of the CEO positions, most of the chairman positions, right? You got to be the man, the hard-earned, the top dog man. And
right.
It starts to lead to the form of when our queens are not getting the right respect and the opportunities. But to go back what you said, being that it's the age gap of us, and you looked up to the older generation, that was the same as me. My mom always jokes, she's like, why do you have a lot of older friends? You were at my bachelor party. I mean,
you were probably the youngest guy there, almost.
That's what I'm saying. Growing up as a kid, I was always by my uncles, my great uncles, older cousins, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation. I truly believe that my uncles were probably of that generation. If you do this, you're not a man. And it's no disrespect to them. It was a point where I'm like, I still respect them to this day, but I also want to make them happy. So I want to do this. Let me accomplish success in the playing athletics or doing this. And so I can really get that title of, I'm a man now, you're a man now, right? So
did you get into sports? Because I know we talked about it before. I don't know we didn't mention, but you played football, and like you've been
football, track and field, soccer, lacrosse. I play a little bit of everything. My two main sports was probably track and field and football. But I wish I would have stayed in soccer. But again, you go back to toxic masculinity. In our community, soccer is not that sport, but it really is one of the most toughest athletic sports in the world. In our community, basketball, football, boxing, stuff that vigorous stuff that puts a toll on our body, but just to prove that you have that toughness. So those are sports
Mm,
I was involved. I did karate as a little kid as well too. Didn't know too much about karate, but I'm a huge fan of MMA, karate, all that great stuff. And yeah, those were the athletics I did growing up. I was a big fan of wrestling, still a big fan of wrestling too. So
yeah.
again, the man's man kind of sports and entertainment. Those are the fields that I done when I was much younger.
And I think too, when you think about it, a lot of times the older guys that we hung around with and that we spent time with, they tried to lead us in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you said,
Yep.
what's actually interesting, man, is for me growing up, it was almost like the opposite, right? Like I didn't get, it was still, I think it was still a level of that kind of toxic masculinity in a sense, because
Mhm.
it was more like, it was more performance, right? Performance as far as education and reading your books, and a man needs to provide, a man needs to do this, a man needs to do that. So when it came to like sports, like I always was interested in sports because I'm already competitive, but it wasn't like push, okay, it wasn't something that said that you were manly because you did the sports, but I still got the same energy with saying it wasn't manly if you couldn't provide. If you wasn't being
Yeah,
able to
true.
be a breadwinner, if you weren't able to be X, Y, and Z, then you weren't being a man. So let me ask you this, because this just brings up another good something to think about, like that I was just
Yep.
thinking about.
Yep. Yep.
With seeing that and like experiencing being pushed in that direction, what do you think it was about the generation that we experienced that really pushed like this toughness on men? Because you mentioned something like, you were like, okay, it wasn't manly unless it was taking a toll on my body, or causing me to have some kind of pain, because all these stuff that you just listed causes pain. Like, think
Absolutely.
about it, right?
Absolutely.
Sports, wrestling, fighting, all that stuff causes pain. What do you think it was about like that, maybe that older generation that kind of pushed that?
Man, honestly, man, I'll go back in slavery. If you think about it, a lot of our male ancestors, man, they were abused. They were abused and they were mocked. And I think that they knew that they didn't want their legacy, their next generation to go through the same era. And what I mean by that is not to be spit on, not to be looked down on. But you have to be tough in order to make a way and make a way at the table, or make a way and get your name mentioned. I really do think it's a fear thing. And it's just, again, our culture, our ancestors, man, we were abused. We were abused and mocked and the whole 9 yards. So I really think that leading on to the older generation, they're like, hey, look, I need you to do this and do that. Like you said, be a provider. I need you to be a provider. I need you to know how to have all these different traits. I need you to different traits of labor. I need you to get your body strong in order to defend, because you're gonna have a family and so on. And that's just coming off the top of the dome.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to slavery for the older generation. Now for someone like my dad or my uncles, again, they had to get it from their dads who were from that area. A lot of discrimination, a lot of mistreatment. I think it's just the past abuse and the past hurt and hate that they feared. I think they think that in order for you to not show fear, you have to be tough. And it's just that key word is fear. And that's where I think it was brought up by our older generation, is just the fear. So if you show less fear, then you're already showing us a sign of confidence, even though they've always had the confidence and they never really had the fear. It was just they never had the opportunity. They never had the opportunity.
All right, so diving a little bit more on that, because you made a good point. You
Mhm.
said, all right, it's not because you think about it. When you think about that aspect of our history, if you look at a lot of, and I don't just try and be light with how I say words, but when you look at the physical structure
Mhm.
of men from our community, and when you look at that comparison, it's like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I could really be scared of you, because I know that I could, if I had to put hands on you, I could do that. So it's like one of those things where, yeah, the fear plays into it and we have to be tough. But I want to dive into a little bit of why, like what causes that, you think?
It's just, oh man. And when you were talking that, the first thing I started thinking of was the movie Django, because the fighting
Hmm.
scene with the two big black guys fighting each
Yeah,
other
yeah, 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 exactly.
for entertainment. And again, we weren't privileged enough to have our ancestors. They were not that privileged to have the great resources that white families back then had. And so it's okay. You had to have that physical appearance because, for one, you're doing heavy labor for people, whether if it was inside or outside. and it's really interesting because now you got me thinking harder on it, because I'm like, I never really thought too much of the root aspect. I just always go on how we were raised in the Black community. Now, and we say the Black community, but honestly, in older generation and all for all males, they were pretty much, the toxic masculinity was the same, right? Same with sports, same with learning how to do certain labor work, learning how to know your way around a vehicle, like you said, being a provider. If the lady makes more than you, ooh, you ain't a man because you ain't providing. You let a woman take care of all that crap. So that's where I think I'm losing my train of thought, because I done lost what the question was.
No, you're right. I think we were just talking about, okay, like, where does that fear where does it come from? Where is it developed from? Like I was mentioning, like when you look at who we are as a community, how we're built, how we're structured, it was like, man, what was it that caused us to
because
have so much fear?
But so I think where that came from was the fact that if and I say they, in slavery, I feel like if they did something wrong, or if they had an issue, if the owner saw an issue what they were doing, they would get abused. You think of I go back to films. You think of the movie, was it
Django?
Not just Glory. Remember Glory? I don't know if you
yeah.
So Glory, the scene where Denzel Washington was getting whipped, and he had already countless slashes on his back, and the man showed he was still the whole time, but if you looked at his eyes was tearing up because it was obviously painful. But I think the fear came because if they knew if they got in trouble, they would have got abused, hurt, or maybe their family would have got the same thing. So the fear comes from, if they hurt me or kill me, they might go to my family and do the same thing. So you need to be on your P's and Q's in order to not get like a red flag or a pink slip by the master. And I think that's where the fear comes from. Just same when it comes to in the workplace, and they tell you, what do? They do trial runs, they do test runs. Hey, look, don't do this because we had such and such do this back in 2018 or 2008, but we just don't want you to follow back. We don't want that same thing to happen to you. So you need to do this and do that. So I think that's where I'm assuming where the fear really came about, was just the countless abuse. They said, okay, look, in order for me to stop doing this, I need to man up. I need to man up.
Yeah. So now here's the thing that I think that's an excellent point. It makes a lot of sense, because if you do show that fear, if you do show in those type of moments and in those type of circumstances that you are afraid, obviously they're going to exploit that. They're going to use that. They're going to be able to take that to another. Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say another example is if you're a fearful driver, most likely if you're a fearful driver, what's going to happen? An accident's going to happen because you're driving already scared and intimidated. And that's why I always like to think positive. For one, I like to drive like I own the road. That don't mean I'm an aggressive driver, Nick. But I'm just saying, in anything in life that you do fearfully, something's not.
You're gonna attract something bad.
Exactly, it's gonna attract something bad. That's what that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's like definitely a law of attraction. But here's the other part of that too, though. Here's the problem, I think, is that when you think about, if you think about in those type of environments, right? I established this kind of fearful environment, and where it was like, okay, I'm in pain as a man, right? So let's say, for instance, using an example, I'm in pain as a man. I can't show that pain. The problem is I might not want to show the person that's above me or that I have to answer to that pain. But what happens now when I go home and I have my son that's trying to be as a kid?
And the problem is you're not going to be your true self to them. You're not going to be you're not going to be really who you are meant to be, and you're not going to be true in your skin. And again, all that does is just hurt the next legacy, because now they're going to be saying, okay, he's never showing his true self. And that's why we have a lot of friends that said, man, I ain't never seen my dad cry before. This is the first time I've seen him cry. And it's rare.
That's a good question. How many times have you ever seen how many times have you ever seen that happen?
Exactly. And I'm the same way. Honestly, if I have to count, I would say 2. And then 2 happens at where it normally happens, at funerals. So that's the only time. That's the only time I've seen my dad get emotional. And I would say the same thing, honestly, for my mom, my family. I've seen my mother get emotional because she's a tough cat too now. She's a tough cat too. So I've only seen her emotional and I don't think that, I think they do that just to always know that if they show that kind of emotion around their kid, then their kid will get worried. So I think my parents continue to raise me great because they never wanted to show that side of them. But it is important to show that side. So now you get all the elements of your parents. But I think they mainly do that to know that, hey, don't ever feel like something's going on. That's why I always say I was very blessed and fortunate to have a great support system like my parents, because there was never moments I was nervous or scared or anything. Maybe if I did something wrong, that's when I was scared. That's when I was scared. That's why I was trying to look for what hiding place can I do this time? What hiding place now? But they knew all my spots. They know my spots, so I was screwed regardless. But I was. But I've never seen my pops really get emotional, and nor have I want to see them see me get emotional. Other as a little kid.
Why not? Why not?
You know what? Because I just personally, I don't like crying. It is weird as it sounds. I don't like being sad. I'm all about positivity. Like I wake up happy. I wake up grateful.
Ready to go.
For real. Because I'm like, if I wake up pissed off, I'm like, okay, my day's not going to go great. So I always keep that positive mindset. And it's weird, and I'm telling my secrets, but I'm that person where secrets, man. I might as well say it on your podcast. I might as well say it. So I'm that person where I could be watching an amazing, inspiring story in by myself, and that's when I start building up the emotion. Because like you said earlier, seeing a journey from day one, and then or just seeing someone hit hard times and get motivated, either blessed. When I see nice blessings being shown, that's what makes me choke up, because it's a beautiful thing to see. I make sure the room is empty. And it's weird. It's weird. My fiance's never seen me cry.
Really?
No, she's never.
I could be honest with you, man. Last year for me was the first time that my wife had ever really seen me cry like that before.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it was on a couple of, like I've shared this with you before, and I talked to other folks about it. I had a rough year last year mentally. And up until that point, I was like, yo, tight. Like, I'm not letting nobody see any kind of emotion.
Clench the butt cheeks.
Yeah. I'm just tight. I'm tight. Yeah, you're not seeing anything. But then last year, like I said, I was having a lot of those challenges, and I realized, okay, for me, there was something that when I went into those spaces and I was allowing myself to be vulnerable like that, open like that, for me, it helped a lot with healing. You know what I mean? It was interesting about it, bro, was when I was able to be vulnerable, it made me less fearful. I didn't have to worry, like it didn't matter anymore. Because this is going back to what we were talking about with toxic masculinity. One of the things that we get caught up with in a stereotype is that men are not allowed to cry. I've only seen my dad cry twice that I could really remember. And one of the times was when I was leaving for the Navy. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like one of
an emotional moment. That's definitely
an emotional moment. But you know what I realized when I was in these moments last year, I was like, okay, if I can be open like this as a man and not have somebody say, okay, Nick, yeah, you're having a difficult time. Why are you having this breakdown? But have somebody that's, hey, I'm here with you and I'm supporting you. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, it doesn't make me less than, you know what I mean? Like it never really made me less.
And it's so freeing. It's so freeing, right?
Sure.
Because the stress is off because you're worrying about it too much. For me, so I have other friends that suffer with mental health. Okay. And I always tell them for them to feel more comfortable. I'm like, look, dude, honestly, majority of everyone that lives in the world has a form, maybe not an advanced form, but they have a form. Like for me, I get nervous to the point I'll get pretty nauseous if I speak in front of 6 people, maybe or even more. I hate public speaking. I absolutely hate it. That's why I enjoy the one-on-one conversations, but I can't stand it. And it's hard because being an entrepreneur and in business, and I'm trying to build a brand, if I don't show that confidence, then I don't make money. If people see the confidence level of myself being very low, they're gonna be like, okay, I'm not gonna have any faith in this business. So again, that adds stress to me. So I'm always just second guessing. So it's definitely freeing when you can really be truly open, and when they see both, you don't have to hide anymore. I can finally relax.
I can just let it out. Yeah, exactly.
I can just let it out.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of part of changing the narrative, because when I got to that point where I was like, okay, yeah, I can just really talk about like the things that I might be dealing with or struggling with. It wasn't necessary for me to be as tough. Going back to the example that you were talking about, when we look at the example of what's happening in our community, what's happening with slavery, whatever it may be. Back then it was like, okay, I can't show this person that they're hurting me, because if I do, then they're going to see it as a sign of weakness. What I
Exactly,
started
exactly.
learning last year was like, okay, I can express this side of my emotion, but that doesn't mean that I'm soft. It doesn't mean that you're gonna walk over me. It just means that, hey, this is a moment where I'm like needing to process this and hurt. I look at guys like, to bring in the Bible to it,
Mm-hmm.
I look at guys like David. You look at a guy like David in the Bible, this guy's a warrior. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he's just, I wouldn't
He
want to
never
run
showed
into
any
him.
fear. He never showed any
That's
fear.
what I'm saying. But if you see a flip side and you go to Psalms and you
Mm-hmm.
read his things and he's talking about the struggles that he had and crying and emotions and all that stuff, I'm like, none of us ever really look at like David and be like, man, this guy was soft. Nobody gonna say that. In our context that we're looking at now, especially in our generation, it's okay. Yeah, there should be a point where we're able to express a lot of those things and get it off. And I think it's,
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing too, I want to
Mhm.
bring up another great, I'll say, a story that just proved, while I'm always trying to change the narrative. A friend of mine, actually, I know multiple, not multiple, but I know probably a few guys that are openly gay. Awesome
Mhm.
dudes. I consider them great friends. One of them I actually had on my podcast, and he's a musician, but he just launched probably 6 months ago. He entered into the drag world,
Okay.
and I told him, I'm like, well, you know what? I would love to have you on the show because, for one, I want to help bridge the gap between Black straight men and the LGBTQ community. Because at the end of the day, you're human beings. You
Mhm.
should not be mistreated just because of your sexual orientation. As a Black man, I feel like that's hypocritical. Just because, hey, people will judge me because of the color of my skin. So why should I judge? And you shouldn't be
True.
judged anything. We live in a universal world, a universal society for a reason. You need to accept all religions, all sexual orientation, all back. You need to accept them and just stop being uptight. That's my whole pet peeve. I'm like, you shouldn't be mistreated. We should all be equally treated the same. So it was a
Yeah.
privilege. I told him, consistently told him it was an honor to have you on the show, and we had a great conversation. Myself and a few of my other great friends. It was really, he was in a room of all straight men,
Right.
production crew in the background too. He was promoting a book of him dressed in drag, and I said, hey, y'all gotta buy my man's book, man. Y'all gotta buy my buddy's book and support, because hey, and for him it was so freeing, and he felt so humbled, because he's like, man, this is my first, like, he's done multiple shows. He said, this is my first show like talking with like straight men. And I'm like, hey, I hope it's the first of many, because you're always invited. And I felt comfortable being around him. I didn't feel like, ooh, he that. I'm like, no, he's
Yeah.
human.
Right.
But again, I bring that up because let a random straight man or anybody be like, oh, that dude, he gay, or he, he
Right.
little sissy because you talking with him. So I'm like, dude, like, and I never understand it. Look, I even stretch it out a little more. My fiance and I, my bride to be, we went to he was also on the show to launch. He was doing a drag show in a beautiful theater located in Virginia Beach in Town Center.
Mhm.
And we attended. I said, hey, look, we were supporting a friend. It was our first ever drag show, and we had a great time. I called the man. I said, hey, congratulations, bro. And I had a joke with him. I'm like, man, normally I don't really congratulate dudes that rock the heels really good, but man, you rocked in them heels, man. Did
For
your feet hurt
sure.
or anything? And she was like, man, your makeup was on point. It was fun, and it was I know it had to be freeing for him, because again, he's a grown man. He's probably well in his mid to late 40s, but he still has his walls to hit, because there's a lot of people that don't like that. But
Mhm.
I bring all that stuff up because they will let you know the fact that you're just talking to me, you're brave, but you also put yourself at a risk of being insulted or people judging you and stuff. And that's what
Right.
that whole toxic masculinity, when I said the stereotypes, actions, it's all about actions. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's no true person that's the man's man. It's all actions. It's all actions. If you wear pink, you're not man enough. I'm wearing this shirt, got some little flowers on it, and I rock the hell out of it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's just they continue to. I just can't stand it. I get hot about it because I was on a radio show, and a gentleman on the show was saying, I feel like now, and he was a much older guy in his 60s. He said, I feel like they're taking our manhood away. I'm like, what are they taking, making men less of a man? I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean, man?
That's a good question.
I was getting so.
What was his answer to that? Because what the heck does that mean? How do you take my manhood away from me? I don't understand.
And see, and I told him, I said, there is no true definition action wise of there. There's a definition of a man, parts wise, man parts,
Yeah,
female
yeah,
parts.
right.
That's simple. But action wise, there's really no true definition of man up and stuff. And honestly, I was so hot, it was a blur, because I don't even think he gave us a response, because it was like we said, no, it's ridiculous. But I think for him, again, he's much older. for him, he's guys like, oh man, I'll just use Pharrell's example. Pharrell is very eccentric, very artsy. Sometimes you might see Pharrell wear some shorts, a hat, like a skateboarder. Next thing you might see Pharrell wear a skirt. The man might wear a skirt. He's that's his brand, that's his persona. That does not make him less of a man. That man has a beautiful family, beautiful wife. He's more man than some of those other guys. The fact that he's wearing a skirt, he makes statements. That's a statement. But again, I use him as an example because I think that's what he brought as an example, just saying these guys are just this and that, and everybody just so sensitive. I'm like, hey, agree to disagree, but I was hot. Because again, you hear it so many times, and I'm just like saying, what did I say, man? I said something smart, which I shouldn't have said, but I just said, dude, you wear Vans. You don't even skateboard. Are you trying to be white? I said something like that. I'm sorry. I said something like that. But it's just, again, I'm like that. But what I just said was a stereotype. Just because you wear Vans does not make you a skateboarder. You happen to just like the shoes. So I get on my rants, man. I apologize. This is your show.
No, that's good. That's good. And that's what I love to hear, because here's the thing. I feel like what I hear sometimes when I hear conversations like that is really, it's not a thing of they're taking our manhood, but I feel like sometimes it's more of a thing of they're exposing my insecurity. So that's where I feel like sometimes we get into these things where it's, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. What can like my thing with it is, number one, who are they? I always ask that question. People are like, oh, they doing this. They like, okay, who is these people? Because you keep saying they is like a group of individuals somewhere that we're supposed to be able to identify. But whenever I ask who they is, we don't have a specific answer for who they are.
And so honestly, like, they is the person inside of you. Seriously, it's the person in your mind. That's the day. Sure. That's the many days with no names, no zip codes, no addresses. You don't even know what they look like. It's just what do they like to order from Starbucks? You don't know. You just don't know. There's just a random person in their head. So it really is. It's interesting. But you're absolutely right. I always wonder, like, who is they? But for me, and I use the example of when I have a fear of public speaking. I have a fear beforehand because I don't even know who's gonna be there. But in my mind, I continue to tell myself, what if? And I make myself, I make myself anxious. I make myself nervous. So for them, their days is the person inside of them that continue to say it. And it could be their great uncle that they looked up to, that probably said, this is their mentor, that probably said, this is what you need to be doing as a man. That's probably another person in their head that's one of the days. But it's ridiculous because we have got to continue to take that out of the picture because there's so many gifted kids. And the sad thing is there's a very high rate in suicides with youth, not even grown people. We're hearing about teenagers taking their lives because they're either getting bullied or they have their true passion, how the way they feel, how the way they want to be addressed, and they're being bullied from school, but they probably are also not respected from the household too, from their family or from their fathers. And it's hard. It's really sad because if we want to see this country continue to grow and continue to thrive with great creators, right? We have to continue to help motivate people. We have to continue to be cheerleaders of other people. We have to continue to brand build. We have to continue to just uplift. The uplifting is just so needed in our society. And I think if we continue to uplift each other and continue to uplift all different sides, we will have so much healing and peace and unity. That's the key thing. And I'm not running for president. None. I know that sounds pretty sharp, but I approve this message. No, I don't approve. But it's just, but seriously, man, it's just the fact that we're having these kind of conversations is unheard of. Some guys are probably looking at these men getting too sentimental. I ain't watching. Yeah. But again,
but here's my thing, dude, too, because I think that what you're saying. So here's where I want to circle back around. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was with your generation, you're probably 13, 14, 15 years younger than I am. We have this generation, like a skipping generation. I personally believe that your generation, like the 20s, 30s, is really going to be key and responsible in changing a lot of this narrative. The reason I say that is because, number one, bro, technology, the way we're connecting, the way we're able to get a message out is completely different. Number two, you're willing to have this kind of conversation, right? That's what I'm saying. Okay, back in the day, maybe about 20 years ago, ain't no way two guys are going to be like, hey, let's get on a podcast together and talk about feelings and what it means to be like a man.
Let's
like,
open up a bottle of wine.
Yeah,
Let's talk.
it wouldn't happen, bro. It would not happen. And like a lot of people would be like, yo, what in the world? And to even go back to like your friend that you had on the podcast, if honestly 20 years ago, if we would have probably been talking about this, the label we would have gotten is, okay, those guys are like homosexual, something's wrong with them, yada yada, this and that. And then it's okay, you could say that, but now what about like my son? Like, how do I now teach my son? I have a 6-year-old son now, and I notice that there's moments where he'll get upset about something. Do I tell him like, nah, stop, quiet that up, be a man? Or do I take the time to say, hey, bro, it's okay for you to be upset. I'm going to give you your time. I'm going to let you process this, because I have to teach you how to process it. Because if I don't teach you how to process your emotions now as a 6-year-old man, like boy, when you're 26 and you're ready to flip out on me because I didn't teach you or give you the space that you needed to like learn how to handle life and understand what life is about, then I can't get mad when you flip out on me at 26 years old. That's my thing. It's okay. We have, even with the older generation, they might say, okay, these younger guys ain't listening, they ain't doing this, but you ain't never really gave younger guys the time to process their emotions and really figure out life. Everything was like, when something bad happened, shut it down, don't say nothing, keep it in.
And you're absolutely right. And you even look, you look at crime going on, right? The crime is involving, again, I go back to teens. They're getting younger and younger, lives are being lost, or the suspects are being younger and younger, the victims are being younger and younger. I always say, look, we have to look at the root, because those criminals are not always just pure T bad. They weren't born bad. There was a time where they were either never, what's the word I'm looking for, didn't have the proper guidance, and that led them to a rough path. And so when you always just start off by saying this and that and this, and there are hard criminals out there that just, their evil is all around. So the evil is existence. But the fact of the matter is, you have to look at the root, and you have to realize, like, where was this kid hurting in order to think this is okay to do? Because sometimes there's a lot of criminals that have great parents, and that's what that mind's blowing people. Like, well, you had some great parents, hardworking, but where was the root? Was the moment came when he was crying and his dad said, "You don't be a sissy," or "Don't man up, man up"? Was that the peak for him? And then he said, "Okay, I'm gonna just flip out when I'm gonna become a head case in middle school, high school, and things like that." You always have to, again, find the root and see exactly where this issue happened. Because again, where are these 15-year-olds getting this mindset from? 16-year-olds, they haven't been in the world that
long enough. Yeah, exactly.
Really, from like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, they're still trying to figure out their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. So then you take those 4 years out and then stretch it out until they get to 15, 16. Where did all this stuff come from? So again, you're speaking right on the head, Nick, as far as letting your son, when it comes to moments like that.
Yeah. And then too, at the same time, I got to say this though, it's my thinking. At the same time, yes, we process emotions, but at the same time, I'm going to still teach you how to protect yourself. I'm going to still teach you like things that I think are like, okay, this is what a man's supposed to do. Like, I'm the head of my household. I'm supposed to protect my family. I'm supposed to be a covering. Those are my roles. Those are my responsibilities. I'm going to teach you how to do those things, but I may try and teach you how to do those things in a different way where you're allowed to be. Because I think one of the damaging things when you look at like toxic masculinity is it robs a lot of men of being who they were supposed to be. Like who God created them to be, right? God created and this is my personal belief, every single person that comes onto the face of this earth, God has created them for a specific purpose. And when you look at this toxic masculinity, because I look back on my own life. When I was younger, I was real like creative. I'm always like all over the place, like always moving. Like in class, I'd be like, yo, this is boring, because I would learn so fast and then move on to the next thing. But it was always like, okay, take all of that and it's okay. Nah, you need to be here at school. You need to be doing this. You need to be doing this. And then it stifled a lot of that. And so you really rob a lot of men from probably becoming like who they were really meant to be, like, and what God designed them to be. Because you think, going back to David, my bad, before I cut you off, going back to David, if you look at like David, the reason he became who he was because he was able to express the emotions of being a man. Like men came to him and was like, bro, this guy, he can still take your head off, but then we can duck off in the corner and have a conversation about how I can't figure out my marriage and how I can't, like, what am I supposed to do? And he's not going to judge me. He's going to put his arm around me and be like, bro, I'll cry with you. I'll do this with you and we're going to make it. But tomorrow we got to get on the battlefield. We're going to go to war. Right. So that's the balance that I think needs to kind of shift, man.
Oh, then man. Amen to that. And what you had said about still teaching your child how to protect himself, that goes on both sides. Everybody teaches their boy and girl how to protect themselves, and just like you said, in different ways. And it's extremely important. I don't think that technically means, okay, you need to protect yourself as a woman, or you need to protect your man says you need to protect yourself as a man. They just say protect yourself. Proper guidance, being that provider, really. And what I'm learning, men and women really are taught how to, hey, you need to help provide for family. There's daughters out there now being say, hey, you need to become, not be a provider, but we'll be a provider, and always still know how to work independently. And then you branch all that stuff together, and then it's okay, we got this. We building up a team now. But you're absolutely right. You still have to build off that guidance. And it's funny. So when I was so until I was 7, my mother was a single parent, but my father was still in my life to this day. He just lived in a different state. But as far as in Virginia, my mother was a single parent, but I was surrounded by my mom, my grandmother, and my 2 aunts. So I was surrounded by all females. So most, again, go back to toxic masculinity. You're raised by all women. Guess what? You probably gonna be more like the women. And I wasn't, because my mom, my aunt, my grandmothers, my grandmother, and my aunts, they taught me really how to be the man. I was blessed with my bonus dad, who got me involved in athletics. He topped it off, but I will say my mom started off giving me that, what's the word I'm looking for? She established that platform of, hey, just be always defending yourself, being tough. It wasn't really about being a true man. She was just teaching me the way of
life. Yeah.
That came and just added on some more greatness. It's just, and again, like I said, my father was in my life, and he was also providing that for me, even though we were still in different states. I was very fortunate to, again, have a great support system. But if I think about it, and if I never got into sports, I'll be the same old Arrington. I'll still cracking jokes. I'll still.
You probably wouldn't be as big though. You'd probably be a little bit slimmer.
No, I don't know. I think I would be. Well, because I was into wrestling before I even watched sports.
Okay,
I was a huge fan of wrestling, so
right,
I'm I got to look like The Rock. I got to look like Triple H. I got to look like these big guys. So I was always into that, and appearance was everything and stuff. So I like to swag out good, but it's just, I was very blessed to have those conversations with my father. Never in that scenario where I thought, oh man, if I don't do this, is he gonna look at me different? Is he gonna do this and do that? No, it was just it was just simply just the way of life. And I'm no parent, so I don't want to say most of y'all parents, you do the same thing, because I don't have kids. But I do think that our generation now, the younger generation, like you said, more tech savvy and just really trying to help change that narrative. We're in that era where the term YOLO, you only live once, we always go by that. Like, why don't you just do this? YOLO. We don't think on it. We just do it. And I think that's what kind of makes at least the 20s and in that range more inspiring. And on top of that too, it's important when it comes to, because you mentioned some key points, but I also want to throw in when it comes to voting, because that voting, it makes a huge difference when certain bills and laws are being passed. That's what goes on in the young. They always say, young people, please vote, because you have some young people that don't worry about it. You have some people that are very much involved in it because they want to see the change. They want to see that narrative being changed. That's why you see a lot of young people marching 24/7 and going above and beyond, painting their whole body, or just doing everything they can to make that example, or to get that message across.
For sure. And I think to add to that, when you talk about that, man, I know for me, like what you have gotten involved with as far as learning about that side, as far as voting, politics, because I'll be honest, I was like, I'm not gonna. The first time I voted was when Obama was going into office, because I was like, yo, all right, let's do it.
I gotta vote this brother in. It's my duty.
And honestly, looking back on it, it was ignorant. I'm not saying that I didn't want Obama to be in office, but I'm just saying, like, why did it take me so long to learn about what's happening and what's affecting me?
Is it okay if I can ask what age you were when Obama first got in office?
Bro, when did he get in office? 2012?
Because I was in 7th grade when he first won when he won that first election.
Which was 2008, right? 2008? When did he come in?
2008? Yeah, 2000. I think.
Dang. Then we're going to have to Google this one. This is sad.
Hey, it's all good. Hey,
we
hey,
go.
it's been a long time. Oh, you
We gonna
googling
have to.
around
We
too?
go. Yeah. We're gonna have to edit. We're gonna have to edit that one out.
We got to fact check it.
We're gonna have to edit that one out because I don't want to give people the wrong. I want to say it was. Yeah, it had to be 2008, 2009,
2000. Okay,
2009
you
or
were close. You're close.
2017. Yeah. So yeah, the elections was in 2008, but he was in office 2009, so he got inaugurated 2009.
Got
So
you.
so 2008, bro. We're 2022, right?
2022 right now. Almost finished with
Let's see.
2022.
So that was 14 years ago for me. So I was your age.
Wow,
so 26.
Shame
27.
on you. No, I'm joking. No, I was late too. I was probably at, I want to say the election. It was probably his second. No, because his second term. Because 7th grade at 18, 19. I think. I don't know if it was a second term or not, but I think I was between 18, 19, possibly 20 when I first voted. Because again, and I've done local many times, but I just never really. No, I take that back. I don't even know if I did local at that much. But to say all that though, I learned my lesson and really focus on that. And just continue. Well, I think I cut you. I'm sorry. I think I cut you off because you were bringing that up.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
no, you're good.
Yeah, no, it's important to definitely understand politics, right? So I'm sharing with my friends, young and older than me, just simple conversations when it comes to local elections. I'm getting involved with. I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends that work in local and state office, so I learn from them, and not just as a business owner. Why it's good to see what's going on in your community, but again, if your whole, at least for my mission is all about changing the narrative. I want to see change. I want to see equality. I want to see just positive changes happening. So I'm always going to be at least having a seat, whether it's on the right or the left. I want to attend all the events and just listen out, get the perspective, and just help lead some of my younger friends and people that are rookies when it comes to understanding politics, because it is important. As much as people will say, hey, that whole phrase or term, your vote matters, doesn't really matter. It does. It really does. I understand that you're hurting the fact that you might have some promises that's never been met, and that's been like the narrative in politics. That's why a lot of people lean away from it. But in order to really see big changes in our society, it starts with you, right? You can make so many changes by yourself. But it also does happen when it comes to in politics. You got to vote. You got to cast your vote and vote for, if you have an issue occurring, hey, vote, man, or either run. That's a lot of people I met. They say, I have an issue, I'm just going to run. I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far, Nick. I'm not. I'll be behind the scenes, but I'm not going to go that far. Right. I mean, my voice can say enough because I can talk for hours and hours and I'm loud, so they can hear me from somewhere. But yeah,
ready
man.
For it. Yeah, you ready for it.
I'm not ready for all that. I'm not ready for all that.
I think that kind of it brings a good segue, man, for us to just land the plane a little bit. I know you brought up some really good points as far as like voting, right? As far as getting involved with voting, understanding the voting aspect of it, and really just changing a lot of cultural things. But what else do you think, maybe not necessarily on more of a public level or more of like a group level, but what do you think that we can do as men to start changing some of that narrative around this issue of toxic masculinity? Whereas, so you had some conversations with older folks, older guys, and you're like, what do you think that we could start doing to change some of that narrative?
For one, simple things is small groups. I remember when I was younger, and instead of Bible study, you had youth groups. So you met up with young kids your age, going over scripture, but also having a lot of fun. You can do the same thing now, doing some small groups. We live in a tech savvy world. So you're doing a perfect example right now, Nick, with your podcast, right? Podcast is listened and heard from all over the world in so many different podcast platforms. So when it comes to social media, we need to use our social media positively, because there's a lot of people that they get those toxic masculinity vibes through social media, because especially young kids are into their phones. I'm looking at young kids now. You're 6 years old. How can you know how to control an iPhone 13 Pro Max more than me? I'm over here trying to figure out something, a little rugrat crap. I got you. Wait, hold on. You can talk. Like this is one of those things. Like, but we live in such a tech savvy world, and everything is a very judgmental world too when it comes to television, when it comes to, again, podcasts, small groups, or just starting off with the one-on-ones. A simple thing, grabbing lunch with your friends, or playing sports and having those conversations at the same time. Because now it's okay. We're fellas, we just finished working out at the gym, lifting weights and doing all that stuff, going hard, but we're also having these conversations while we're doing it. So intertwining and incorporating the exact same things, going to your favorite sports bar and having those conversations, or just enjoying some just fellowship. So you want to continue to that's some of just the things I'm thinking in my head right now. Social media, small groups, group chats. Oh man, what else? I don't know. I think that's all I can think of in my head, man. But that's how you have to start it off. Just start with one person, and sometimes that one person can be like, hey, look, I have this guy that we had the same conversation. Okay, bring him on, and I can do the same thing, and you continue to build it up. And then you have a church size of dudes you're talking to that have the same thing. And if they continue to spread that message and refer to others, that's how you got to do it. That's really how you do it, just by speaking, and just by speaking into existence, and by actions as well. So my example with my friend who's openly gay, that I even posted that on my social media, knowing everybody can see it. I'm like, hey, but it's positivity. We're helping bridge the gap. And we had a great time, and we talking all positive vibes. We're laughing. Hey, we're helping change that narrative.
I watched that episode too. He was firing off. He was funny, man. I like him. He's got his energy is hype, bro.
And let me tell you something. When the episode when it goes out, man, the episode was so powerful. I honestly think it was probably my longest show, ever recorded. But it was so needed. Like it was very inspiring. I was happy. Just the fact that I had to give myself a pat on the back, because I'm like, the guest, I usually hit up the guest. So I feel like that's good. I was proud, man. I was honored. And that same day of recording, I picked him up from his location because his car was in the shop. So again, it was still changing narrative. I was close to the man that, hey, so it was still, I felt just, I don't know. I just felt, Lord, this was my A for the day, because I just feel like I made this man's day. And I hope that this message was spread across, and I hope people can learn something from it. So I was really happy about that day.
For sure. And I think you hit some really good points, man. And I think too, to add a little bit of seasoning on what you just said, I think you made a good point about actions. It's really about actions, our actions that we take. But then it's really about men being willing to have the courage to take that action, right? Because that's my thing, is you were willing to say, I'm going to put myself out there, not because I'm concerned about what everybody else is saying, but because I'm concerned about, this is another human being that has a whole story that people need to hear. And when people hear his story, they can say, okay, now I understand where you're at, or not even really why, but I just understand where you're at in life. You know what I mean? Because I hear your story. And so I think that's really key, man, is just really just having the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to have these difficult conversations. That's why I don't mind having these conversations, because a lot of these kind of conversations people don't want to have, because it exposes a lot of my insecurity. It exposes a lot of your insecurity. It exposes a lot of who we are as men.
Yep, it brings up that fear. It brings up that fear. Yep.
For sure. And we start talking and we're like, dang, I never really thought about how I was afraid of this or how I looked at this. But I think those conversations are really important, man. I think, man, you hit the nail right on the head. Just having those conversations, bringing that positivity to social media, our interactions, how we're dealing with people, how we're talking with people, man, I think can definitely change the narrative on that, man. I feel good, man. I feel like this was a really good convo. Anything else you could think about, man, that you want to add?
Man, I don't even, man. I'm thinking so fast right now, because I'm like, right when we end this, it'll be like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna call you. Like, look, can you record my voice saying this right now? You can. Okay, I try.
Sure.
But yeah, man. Just, I mean, you definitely nailed it as far as having the courage, being more comfortable, being open, and not showing that fear. That's really, when you said being more open and having that courage, that was like, man, I wish I would have said that. So you took my last point. Point, because that's really it. And yeah, man, it's simple. So I truly, I hope they can get a lot from this conversation that we had, and hope to spread and have more conversations like that. And again, it's simple, guys. Man up doesn't exist. The true meaning of being a man is just being yourself. There's no such true meaning as it. Just be yourself. Be the way that you want to be. Do not hold that in. Okay, please do not hold that in, because all you're doing is constantly building that lack of confidence in your true self. So please express your true self. Please, it doesn't make you lack of a man to talk sincere, to have those emotional conversations with your teammates, with your brothers, or just bros, man, it does not make you less of a man. And if it goes on in your household, please let your father, let that masculine person in your family know that, so that maybe you can teach them and bring them more open, and then you're inspiring them to change their narrative. That's my 2 cents, Nick. That's all I got.
Yeah,
That's all I
I
had
love
right
it.
there.
I love it. I love it, man. I appreciate it, man. Hey, look, this has been the Life Recreated Show, man. I enjoyed a wonderful time with my brother Arrington here, and I'm going to make sure that I do a couple things. I'm going to link down in the description below where you can find Arrington. Actually, before we head out, man, where can people find you? Give them a shout out, man. Where can they find you on social media and everywhere?
Okay, so my IG is my name, Arrington Gavin. Very simple. Please also follow my business, Rugged Evo. That's one of my business, Rugged Evolution Beard Care, and as well as my podcast, Our Smooth Club Podcast, a show where everyday men discuss everyday topics. We're also on Instagram, our Facebook page, Our Smooth Club Podcast, our YouTube, Rugged Evo TV. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. And again, I truly appreciate it, Nick. And thank you for having me. And for those, just please continue to support my friend Nick. Continue to support this movement. His show is awesome. I'm jealous of his set. And he is just, he's the man. He's the man. But again, I truly thank you, brother, for allowing me to have this conversation with you and for inviting me. Hey, I hope to have some more invites to come. And
For sure.
it was awesome, man. It was awesome. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely, man. And I'll make sure I'll link down everything in the description below so you can find Arrington, find out everything he's doing. I'm going to link some of the shows that he talked about, and just definitely look into what he's got going on. And for us, the reason that we're having this kind of conversation is because it's necessary for us as men to be able to change that narrative on this channel, on this show. We're all about really just learning, healing, and growing all these different aspects of life. Check us out on YouTube. If you're checking us out on the podcast, definitely leave a comment down below, leave a review. Let me know how we're doing, what we can improve on, things that you might want to hear. Those things definitely help out. But until next time, I want you to keep learning, keep healing, and keep growing.